In the past 7 years, NBA Youngboy has been connected to 5 different murders that shook the hip-hop community to its core, with investigators, fans, and even his own lyrics suggesting his involvement in orchestrating hits that left bodies scattered across Louisiana. From his former best friend G Money gunned down outside a Baton Rouge studio in 2017 to the mysterious death of an opposition female known only as TMH Hammer's Girl, these cases paint a picture of one of rap's biggest stars allegedly operating like a street general, calling shots and dropping bags that ended lives while building his empire. What makes this even more chilling is how Youngboy seemed to predict, reference, or outright brag about these deaths in his music, creating a trail of lyrical evidence that has fans and law enforcement asking the same question. Is NBA Youngboy just a talented rapper telling stories, or is he a criminal mastermind hiding in plain sight? The story begins in 2017 with the most shocking betrayal in Baton Rouge rap history. G Money, born Garrett Burton, wasn't just another rapper from Louisiana. He was NBA Youngboy's mentor, older brother figure, and the person who literally brought him into the rap game. To understand how deep this relationship went, you have to go back to when Youngboy was just a teenager with dreams bigger than his circumstances. G Money was already established in the TBG crew, which stood for Top Boy Gorillas, and he saw something special in the young kid who would later become NBA Youngboy. They weren't just rap partners, they were family. G Money would let Youngboy stay at his house, taught him about the music business, and even appeared on Youngboy's early projects. In interviews, Youngboy would refer to G Money as his big brother, someone he looked up to and respected. But the streets have a way of complicating even the strongest bonds, and what started as a brotherhood would eventually turn into one of the most personal and deadly beefs in hip-hop history. The first crack in their relationship came when Youngboy decided to leave TBG and start his own crew, Never Broke Again, or NBA. This wasn't just a business decision. It was seen as a betrayal by some members of TBG, including G Money. But what really set everything off wasn't music or money, it was family. According to multiple sources and later confirmed by G Money himself in interviews, he had been involved with NBA Youngboy's sister. This wasn't just a casual relationship. G Money would later brag about it publicly, even going into explicit detail about their encounters. The disrespect reached a boiling point when G Money decided to air out their personal business in the most public way possible. In September 2017, just weeks before his death, G Money sat down for an interview with Say Cheese TV, where he not only confirmed his relationship with Youngboy's sister, but seemed to take pleasure in discussing it. He told the interviewer, he mad about his sister too though. Yeah, I had fed her a long time ago. He wasn't really tripping on it back then, you know what I'm saying? He calling me big brother and shit. But I guess he let that fame and cess get to his head. Now he feel like he just this new nut-mon, whoever he's supposed to be, whatever he call himself. This interview was like pouring gasoline on an already burning fire. In the streets, disrespecting someone's family, especially their sister, is one of the ultimate violations. But G Money wasn't done. He followed up the interview with one of the most disrespectful diss tracks in Louisiana rap history, called Industry. On this track, G Money didn't just rap about his relationship with Youngboy's sister. He got graphic and disrespectful with it. He rapped, "Your sister swallowed nut, so I never kissed her, but I fucked with her, so I never dissed her." He also took shots at Youngboy's character, calling him fake and claiming he knew the real him. But perhaps most prophetically, G Money also rapped about how he couldn't kill Youngboy because of his relationship with Youngboy's mother, saying, "You a BL. I know the real you Shahonda son. I can't kill you." The track was a declaration of war, and everyone in Baton Rouge knew it. Youngboy responded with his own diss tracks, but the damage was done. The relationship between these former brothers was beyond repair, and in the streets of Baton Rouge, that kind of disrespect usually only ends one way. What made the situation even more volatile was that both sides had real street credibility and access to weapons. This wasn't just rap beef. This was personal, and it was about to turn deadly. On September 10th, 2017, just 2 weeks after the Industry track was released, G Money was leaving his regular recording studio on Dallas Drive in Baton Rouge. It was around 1:30 in the morning, and G had just finished working on some music. According to witnesses, as soon as he stepped outside the studio, gunmen were waiting for him. They opened fire immediately, hitting G Money multiple times. He tried to run back toward the studio but collapsed in the parking lot. By the time paramedics arrived, G Money was already gone. He was just 22 years old. The murder sent shockwaves through Baton Rouge and the hip-hop community. Here was a rising star, someone with real talent and a growing fan base, gunned down in what was clearly a targeted hit. But what made people immediately point fingers at NBA Youngboy wasn't just the timing. It was everything that happened afterward. Within hours of G-Money's death, social media was buzzing with rumors that NBA was behind the hit. The beef had been so public, so personal, and so recent that it seemed like more than a coincidence. But rumors became more substantial when investigators started looking into the case. The Baton Rouge Police Department immediately began focusing on NBA Youngboy's crew as potential suspects. Their investigation led them to DeAndre Fields, better known as NBA Lil Pap, one of Youngboy's closest associates and a member of his inner circle. According to police reports and court documents, investigators believe that Lil Pap was the trigger man in G-Money's murder, and that the hit was ordered as part of the ongoing beef between NBA and TBG. The evidence against Lil Pap seemed substantial at first. Witnesses placed him in the area around the time of the shooting. His phone records showed he was in contact with other NBA members before and after the murder. Most damning of all, investigators claimed they had surveillance footage that showed someone matching Lil Pap's description fleeing the scene. In 2018, nearly a year after G-Money's death, Lil Pap was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. But here's where the story takes an interesting turn that had everyone talking about luck, legal maneuvering, or something more sinister. Despite what seemed like solid evidence, Lil Pap's case began falling apart almost immediately. Key witnesses started recanting their statements or refusing to cooperate with prosecutors. The surveillance footage that was supposed to be the smoking gun was ruled inadmissible due to technical issues with how it was obtained. Phone records that seemed incriminating were explained away by Lil Pap's defense team as circumstantial at best. Most importantly, no physical evidence directly linked Lil Pap to the murder weapon or the crime scene. In a case that seemed like a slam dunk for prosecutors, they found themselves with a circumstantial case that was falling apart piece by piece. In 2021, after spending 3 years fighting the charges, Lil Pap took a plea deal for a much lesser charge, accessory after the fact. Instead of life in prison for murder, he was sentenced to just 5 years, and with time served and good behavior, he was released in 2022. The fact that Lil Pap beat what seemed like a solid murder case had people asking questions. Some said it was just good legal representation and prosecutorial incompetence. Others whispered about witness intimidation and evidence tampering, but what really had people talking was NBA Youngboy's reaction to both G-Money's death and Lil Pap's legal victory. Instead of staying quiet or showing remorse, Youngboy seemed to celebrate both events in his music. Just 1 month after G-Money's murder, Youngboy released a track called Pour One, where he seemed to reference his former friend's death. He rapped, "Remember smoking weed with your lil brother, matter of fact, nigga. I used to call you my big brother. Then you did some foul CDAOs and had with my sister, then threw it in my face in front of people on Insta." The track was supposedly a tribute to their former friendship, but many fans interpreted it as Youngboy taking a victory lap over his dead enemy. But it was on later tracks where Youngboy seemed to get more explicit about his alleged involvement. On songs like Step on Essin, released in 2020, he rapped lines that fans immediately connected to G-Money's murder. "Who that is, kill the witness, say the word, and they gon' blitz 'em, ain't got no words for nobody, gee. I pull that stick out on a knee. You, like lay your bed, I throw the pillow, the police after all my knee as..." The reference to throwing a pillow was particularly chilling because rumors had circulated that G-Money's killers threw a pillow at his body and told him to go to sleep, though this was never confirmed by police. What made fans and investigators even more suspicious was how Youngboy seemed to know details about the murder that weren't public. In various tracks, he referenced specific aspects of how G-Money died, where he died, and even seemed to mock the circumstances of his death. For someone who claimed to have nothing to do with the murder, he sure seemed to know a lot about it. The G-Money case established a pattern that would repeat itself over the next several years. NBA Youngboy would have beef with someone. That person would end up dead under suspicious circumstances. Someone from Youngboy's crew might get arrested but ultimately beat the case. And then Youngboy would release music that seemed to reference or celebrate the death. It was a pattern that would play out 4 more times, each case more brazen than the last. The second name on this deadly list is TBG Quick, and his story shows how the war between NBA and TBG escalated from personal beef to an all-out street war that would claim multiple lives. Born Quentin Marshall, TBG Quick was one of G-Money's closest friends and a rising star in the TBG crew. Unlike G-Money, Quick didn't have a personal relationship with NBA Youngboy. His beef was purely about loyalty and revenge. When G-Money was murdered in 2017, Quick took it personally and made it his mission to get payback for his fallen friend. Quick wasn't just talking tough on social media. He was actively putting pressure on NBA Youngboy and his crew in the streets. According to multiple sources in Baton Rouge, Quick was one of the main people pushing for retaliation after G-Money's death. He was young, hungry, and had nothing to lose. At just 19 years old, Quick had already built a reputation as someone who would really slide for his people, and he wasn't about to let his friend's murder go unanswered. The beef between Quick and NBA intensified throughout 2018. Quick would regularly post on social media, throwing shots at Youngboy and his crew. He wasn't subtle about it either. He would post pictures with guns, make threats, and generally let it be known that he was looking for smoke with NBA. What made Quick particularly dangerous was that he wasn't just a rapper. He was really in the streets, and he had the respect and resources to back up his threats. But Quick's most significant contribution to the beef was his music. In early 2018, he released several diss tracks aimed directly at NBA Youngboy and his crew. Tracks like War With Us and Never Lackin' weren't just rap songs, they were declarations of war set to music. On Never Lackin', Quick made it clear that he was ready to die for his friend, rapping about how he was always strapped and ready for whatever NBA wanted to bring his way. The music video for Never Lackin' was particularly provocative. Quick and his crew were shown with multiple weapons, making direct threats toward NBA, and generally presenting themselves as an army ready for war. At the end of the video, Quick looked directly into the camera and said, "Pot ass nah, I don't hide behind money nah, cause I ain't got that much nah, so I'm in the field nah." It was a direct shot at Youngboy, suggesting that while Youngboy might have money and fame, Quick was still in the trenches ready to handle business the street way. What made Quick's situation even more dangerous was his association with other TBG members who were equally committed to getting revenge for G-Money. He was particularly close with lled, another TBG member who would later be arrested for multiple attempted murders related to the NBA-TBG beef. Together, Quick and lled represented the young, hungry, and extremely dangerous wing of TBG that wasn't interested in resolving the beef through music or mediation. Throughout 2018, the tension between Quick and NBA continued to escalate. There were reports of near-miss encounters between the two sides, social media threats, and a general atmosphere of violence that had everyone in Baton Rouge on edge. Quick was becoming increasingly bold in his threats and his movements, seemingly unaware that his high profile was making him an easy target. The end came for TBG Quick on November 25, 2018, just over a year after G-Money's murder. Quick was at his apartment complex in Baton Rouge when gunmen approached and opened fire. According to police reports, Quick was shot multiple times and died at the scene. He was just 20 years old, another young life cut short by the ongoing war between NBA and TBG. What made Quick's murder particularly suspicious was how it happened. Unlike G-Money's murder, which happened at a public location with potential witnesses, Quick was killed at his home, suggesting that the killers knew his routine and had been watching him. The fact that he was killed at his apartment complex also suggested that this wasn't a random encounter. Someone had specifically targeted him at a location where they knew he would be vulnerable. Immediately after Quick's death, fingers pointed toward NBA Youngboy and his crew. The timing was too convenient, and Quick had been too vocal in his threats against NBA for this to be seen as anything other than retaliation. But unlike with G-Money's murder, no one from NBA was ever arrested or charged in connection with Quick's death. The case remains officially unsolved, though everyone in Baton Rouge knows who they think was responsible. What made people even more suspicious was NBA Youngboy's reaction to Quick's death. Instead of expressing condolences or staying quiet, Youngboy seemed to celebrate the murder in his music. On tracks released after Quick's death, Youngboy made references that fans immediately connected to the young TBG member's murder. On Uncharted Love, he rapped, "Do dirty work in Finn Tims. We leave the mark above the rim. You was like my brother. Why the fi you crossed that line? Blew that fat batit's mind before he tried." The reference to Fat Ba-E was seen as a direct shot at Quick, who was heavy-set. Even more explicit was a line from the track Impact where Youngboy rapped, "Look, you get caught slipping, then get killed. That's how it's supposed to be. Num, spoke on my mama. I ain't want talk. I end up killing a neck." Fans interpreted this as Youngboy admitting to having Quick killed because Quick had disrespected his mother in some of his diss tracks. But perhaps the most chilling reference came on a track called Dead Trolls, where Youngboy seemed to directly reference Quick's death and mock his final moments. He rapped about someone who said, "Watch the news," a reference to Quick telling people to watch the news for his next move, and then talked about how that now's dead and it was two victims ain't make it through. The specificity of these references had fans convinced that Youngboy wasn't just rapping about street life in general, he was specifically talking about Quick's murder. What made the situation even more suspicious was the involvement of someone named Duty Black, who was allegedly close to NBA Youngboy. According to street rumors, Duty Black was the one who actually carried out the hit on Quick, and he was able to do it because he knew someone who lived in Quick's apartment complex. This gave him access and knowledge of Quick's movements that an outsider wouldn't have had. Duty Black was never arrested for Quick's murder, but he was killed himself a few years later, leading some to speculate that his death was connected to his alleged involvement in Quick's murder. The Quick murder established NBA Youngboy's reputation as someone who didn't just talk tough in his music, he was allegedly willing and able to have people killed who crossed him. Unlike the G-Money situation, which could be explained as personal beef that got out of hand, Quick's murder seemed more calculated and businesslike. Quick was killed not because of personal disrespect, but because he was a threat to NBA's operations and reputation in Baton Rouge. What made the situation even more tragic was that Quick was just a kid who was trying to avenge his friend's death. He wasn't a major player in the streets, he wasn't making significant money from illegal activities, and he wasn't really a threat to Youngboy's career or business interests. He was just a loyal friend who refused to let his homie's murder go unanswered, and that loyalty cost him his life. The third victim in this deadly saga is True Bleeda, and his story represents an escalation in both the boldness of the alleged hits and the public nature of the violence. True Bleeda, whose real name was Dante Dorsey, was a 22-year-old rapper from Baton Rouge who was part of a crew called the Bleeders. Unlike G-Money and TBG Quick, True Bleeda didn't have a direct personal beef with NBA Youngboy. Instead, he got caught up in the larger war between different factions in Baton Rouge, and his crew's association with NBA's enemies made him a target. To understand True Bleeda's story, you have to understand the complex web of alliances and beefs that existed in Baton Rouge by 2022. The original NBA versus TBG beef had spawned multiple smaller conflicts, with different crews choosing sides and the violence spreading throughout the city. The Bleeders were a relatively new crew that had aligned themselves against NBA, and True Bleeda was their most prominent member and their best hope for mainstream success. True Bleeda was actually a talented rapper with real potential. His music was getting attention outside of Baton Rouge, and he had the charisma and skill to potentially make it to the next level. But like so many young rappers from violent cities, he couldn't separate his music career from the street politics that surrounded him. Instead of staying neutral or keeping his head down, True Bleeda actively participated in the ongoing beef with NBA. What made True Bleeda particularly dangerous to NBA was his association with NBA Ben 10's enemies. Ben 10, whose real name is Kentrell Gaulden Jr., is NBA Youngboy's younger brother and a member of the NBA crew. In December 2021, Ben 10 and his cousin Marvin Baptiste were involved in a drive-by shooting on Interstate 10 near Prairieville, Louisiana. Baptiste was killed in the shooting, and Ben 10 was wounded but survived. The shooting was a major escalation in the ongoing violence, and it immediately became clear that someone was specifically targeting NBA family members. True Bleeda and his crew wasted no time in claiming responsibility for the attack, or at least celebrating it publicly. They released a diss track called Gator Pack, where they explicitly referenced the shooting and mocked Ben 10 for surviving while his cousin died. On the track, True Bleeda's associate rapped, 40 Glock, you rapped, heard a nent, stepped on ooh, but they was trying to step on Ben. He felt that fire, fucked around, and shut down I-10. The reference was clear. They were bragging about the shooting that killed Ben 10's cousin and nearly killed Ben 10 himself. This wasn't just typical rap beef posturing. This was a direct admission of involvement in a murder. The Gator Pack track was a declaration of war, and everyone in Baton Rouge knew it. By publicly claiming the hit on Ben 10 and his cousin, True Bleeda and his crew had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. They had killed NBA family and then bragged about it in a song. In the streets, that kind of disrespect only ends one way. NBA Ben 10 responded to the diss track with his own social media posts, making it clear that he wasn't intimidated and that retaliation was coming. He posted videos of himself with weapons, made threats toward the Bleeders, and generally let it be known that the war was far from over. But what made the situation particularly dangerous was that this wasn't just about Ben 10's personal beef. This was about NBA family being targeted, which meant that NBA Youngboy himself was now directly involved. The retaliation came on February 25th, 2022, and it was swift, brutal, and public. True Bleeda was at the Mall of Louisiana, one of the busiest shopping centers in Baton Rouge, with several members of his crew. According to witnesses and security footage, they were shopping and taking pictures with fans when gunmen approached them in the parking lot. What happened next was like something out of a movie. Multiple shooters opened fire on True Bleeda and his crew in broad daylight, in front of dozens of witnesses, at one of the most public locations in the city. True Bleeda and his associate Cliff were killed instantly. Two other members of his crew, including his cousin Corey, were wounded but survived. The shooters then fled the scene in getaway cars, leaving behind a scene of carnage that shocked even a city accustomed to violence. The Mall of Louisiana shooting was significant for several reasons. First, it showed that whoever was behind it had no fear of consequences. Carrying out a multiple murder in broad daylight at a busy mall required either incredible desperation or complete confidence that they wouldn't be caught. Second, it demonstrated a level of organization and planning that suggested this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment retaliation. This was a carefully planned hit. Most importantly, the public nature of the shooting sent a message to everyone in Baton Rouge. NBA was willing to kill their enemies anywhere, anytime, regardless of witnesses or consequences. The fact that they chose to do it at the mall, where families shop and children play, showed a complete disregard for innocent life and a willingness to terrorize the entire community to make their point. The investigation into True Bleeda's murder initially focused on the obvious suspects, NBA members seeking revenge for the Ben 10 shooting. Police arrested several people in connection with the case, including Demetrian Grimm, who was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. However, like so many cases connected to NBA Youngboy, the prosecution's case began falling apart almost immediately. Key witnesses refused to cooperate with police, claiming they were afraid for their safety. Physical evidence was limited because the shooters had been careful to avoid leaving traces. Most importantly, the prosecution couldn't definitively prove who had ordered the hit or establish a clear chain of command that led back to NBA leadership. In August 2022, a grand jury declined to formally indict Grimm for the murders, citing insufficient evidence. While prosecutors said they would continue to investigate and potentially bring the case back to a grand jury, no one has been convicted for True Bleeda's murder as of 2025. Once again, a case that seemed to clearly point toward NBA involvement resulted in no convictions. But what really had people convinced that NBA was behind True Bleeda's murder was, once again, NBA Youngboy's musical response to the killing. In tracks released after the mall shooting, Youngboy made references that fans immediately connected to True Bleeda's death. On a song called Bring the Hook, he rapped, "Foji TBG, they all going to bleed," which fans saw as a direct reference to the Bleeders crew and a prediction or celebration of True Bleeda's death. Even more explicit was a track where Youngboy seemed to reference the specific circumstances of the mall shooting. He rapped about enemies getting caught in public places and about making examples of people who crossed his family. The specificity of these references, combined with the timing of their release, had fans convinced that Youngboy wasn't just making general threats. He was specifically talking about True Bleeda's murder. What made True Bleeda's case particularly tragic was that he was just 22 years old with real talent and potential. Unlike some of the other victims who were primarily street figures who happened to rap, True Bleeda was a legitimate artist who might have been able to make it out of Baton Rouge and build a successful career. But his involvement in the street politics and his crew's decision to target NBA family members sealed his fate. The True Bleeda murder also marked an escalation in the public nature of the violence. While G Money and TBG Quick were killed in relatively private settings, True Bleeda was murdered in broad daylight at a busy mall. This suggested that whoever was ordering these hits was becoming more brazen and less concerned about witnesses or public attention. The fourth name on this deadly list is lled, and his story represents perhaps the most complex and controversial case in this entire saga. Unlike the previous victims who were clearly enemies of NBA Youngboy, lled's relationship with Youngboy was complicated, involving personal betrayal, romantic entanglements, and a beef that played out very publicly on social media before ending in tragedy. lled, whose real name was Javorius Scott, was a 24-year-old rapper from Bogalusa, Louisiana, about an hour away from Baton Rouge. Unlike the other victims who were primarily local figures, lled had achieved real mainstream success with millions of streams and a growing national fan base. He was signed to Atlantic Records and had collaborated with major artists, making him the highest-profile victim in this entire story. The beef between NBA Youngboy and lled didn't start over street politics or territorial disputes. It started over women. In 2019, rumors began circulating that lled was involved with Jania Meshel, who was NBA Youngboy's ex-girlfriend and the mother of one of his children. The situation was complicated by the fact that Youngboy and lled had previously been friendly, even collaborating on music together. But what really set Youngboy off wasn't just that lled was allegedly involved with his ex, it was that lled was bragging about it publicly and disrespecting Youngboy in the process. According to social media posts and leaked text messages, lled was not only involved with Jania but was also allegedly involved with another one of Youngboy's ex-girlfriends, a woman known as K. Marie. The situation reached a boiling point when lled released a diss track called 38K in April 2020, which was a direct shot at NBA Youngboy. The title itself was a play on Youngboy's 38 Baby project, with the K standing for killer. In the song and its accompanying music video, lled made explicit references to his alleged relationships with Youngboy's ex-girlfriends, even claiming to have text message evidence of Youngboy begging him to stop seeing Jania. What made the 38K track particularly disrespectful was how specific lled got about his alleged encounters with Youngboy's ex-girlfriends. He rapped about specific hotel rooms, specific cities, and specific acts, painting a picture of Youngboy as someone who couldn't keep his women satisfied. In the hip-hop world, and especially in the street culture that both artists came from, this kind of public disrespect is considered one of the ultimate violations. NBA Youngboy initially tried to ignore the situation, but lled kept pushing. He continued making social media posts about the situation, released more music with subliminal shots at Youngboy, and generally seemed to be enjoying the attention that the beef was bringing him. What lled may not have realized was that he was playing a very dangerous game with someone who had allegedly already been connected to multiple murders. The beef escalated throughout 2020 and 2021, with both artists releasing diss tracks and making social media posts aimed at each other. But what made the situation particularly volatile was that it wasn't just about music or even personal disrespect. It was about respect and reputation in a culture where those things are literally matters of life and death. Things came to a head in May 2020 when NBA Youngboy and his crew allegedly confronted lled in person. According to social media posts from Youngboy, they ran down on lled and his crew, forcing them to flee. Youngboy posted a video claiming that lled had run away and left his own people behind, which was seen as the ultimate humiliation in street culture. But instead of ending the beef, this confrontation seemed to make lled more determined to prove that he wasn't scared of NBA Youngboy. He continued releasing music with shots at Youngboy, continued posting on social media, and generally refused to back down despite the obvious danger he was putting himself in. What made lled's situation particularly precarious was his location. While he was from Bogalusa, which was outside of NBA's immediate territory, he frequently traveled to Baton Rouge and other areas where NBA had influence. He also didn't have the same level of street protection that someone like G Money or TBG Quick had. He was primarily a successful rapper who had gotten caught up in street politics that he may not have fully understood. The end came for lled on July 27, 2022, and it was as brutal and public as any of the previous murders. lled was at his home in Bogalusa with his father when multiple gunmen approached the house and opened fire. According to police reports, lled and his father tried to run inside the house, but the shooters had surrounded the property. lled was hit multiple times and died at the scene. His father was also shot but survived his injuries. The fact that the shooting happened at lled's family home, with his father present, showed a level of ruthlessness that shocked even people accustomed to street violence. This wasn't just a hit on an enemy. This was an attack on an entire family. What made lled's murder particularly suspicious was the timing and the method. The shooting happened just as lled was experiencing the biggest success of his career, with his music streaming millions of times and major opportunities on the horizon. The fact that multiple gunmen surrounded his house suggested a level of planning and resources that pointed to a well-organized hit rather than local beef or random violence. Immediately after lled's death, speculation focused on NBA Youngboy and his crew. The beef between the two artists had been so public and so personal that it seemed like more than a coincidence that lled ended up dead. But what really had people convinced that NBA was involved was, once again, Youngboy's musical response to the murder. In tracks released after lled's death, NBA Youngboy made references that fans immediately connected to the murder. On a song called Chop a Doctor, he rapped about killing someone in front of their family members, which fans saw as a reference to lled being killed in front of his father. On another track called Slimeo, he made references to someone dying at their house and even mentioned the number 23, which lled frequently used in his music and social media. But perhaps the most explicit reference came on an unreleased track called My Life that leaked in 2023. On this song, Youngboy allegedly rapped, "Jay was my third body, I'm the one who took his life." While the audio quality of the leak made it difficult to verify exactly what was said, fans were convinced that Youngboy was directly admitting to having lled killed. What made lled's case different from the others was the level of mainstream attention it received. Unlike G Money, TBG Quick, and True Bleeda, who were primarily known in Louisiana, lled was a nationally recognized artist with millions of fans. His death made national news and brought scrutiny to the ongoing violence in Louisiana's rap scene. The investigation into lled's murder is still ongoing, and no arrests have been made as of 2025. However, the case has brought increased attention to NBA Youngboy and the pattern of violence that seems to follow him. Federal investigators are reportedly looking into connections between lled's murder and other cases involving NBA associates. What made lled's story particularly tragic was that he had everything to live for. He was young, talented, successful, and had a bright future ahead of him. But his decision to engage in a public beef with NBA Youngboy, particularly over personal matters involving women, ultimately cost him his life. His death served as a warning to other artists about the dangers of getting involved in street politics, even when you have mainstream success. The fifth and final name on this list is perhaps the most mysterious and controversial. The woman known only as the TMH Hammers Girl, or the Ops Girl. Unlike the previous four victims, who were all male rappers with public profiles, this case involves a young woman whose identity has never been publicly confirmed and whose connection to the ongoing violence is based primarily on rumors, social media speculation, and cryptic references in NBA Youngboy's music. To understand this case, you have to understand the broader context of the gang politics in Baton Rouge and how women sometimes get caught up in conflicts between rival crews. TMH, which stands for Top Hitters Mafia, was one of several crews in Baton Rouge that had beef with NBA. The Hammers were a subset or affiliate of TMH, and like many street crews, they had female associates who were sometimes romantically involved with male members. According to rumors that circulated on social media and in Baton Rouge street circles, sometime in 2021 or 2022, a young woman who was associated with the TMH Hammers was found dead under suspicious circumstances. The details of her death were never made public, and local media didn't cover the story extensively, which has led to speculation that her murder was either covered up or that authorities didn't consider it newsworthy. What made people connect this woman's death to NBA Youngboy wasn't any official evidence or police statements. It was a combination of social media rumors, timing, and references in Youngboy's music that fans interpreted as admissions or celebrations of her murder. The case represents the most speculative and controversial entry on this list, but it's included because of how frequently it's discussed in connection with NBA Youngboy's alleged body count. The rumors about the Ops Girl began circulating on social media platforms like Twitter, Instagram, and Reddit, where users claimed to have inside knowledge about a female associate of NBA's enemies who had been killed as part of the ongoing street war. These rumors were never substantiated with official reports or credible sources, but they gained traction because they fit the pattern of escalating violence that had characterized the NBA versus TBG/TMH conflicts. What gave these rumors more credibility in the minds of fans and street watchers was NBA Youngboy's musical references to violence against women connected to his enemies. On various tracks released between 2021 and 2023, Youngboy made references to making mamas cry, leaving daughters bleeding, and other lyrics that fans interpreted as references to violence against female family members or associates of his enemies. On the track Dead Trolls, Youngboy rapped lines that fans connected to the alleged murder of the TMH girl. He talked about making examples of people connected to his enemies and referenced specific details that fans claimed matched the circumstances of the woman's death. However, these interpretations were largely speculative, and the lyrics could just as easily have been general threats or references to other incidents. What made the Ops Girl case particularly controversial was the implication that NBA Youngboy or his associates would target women as part of their street war. While violence against rival gang members is unfortunately common in street conflicts, targeting women who are only peripherally connected to the beef represents a significant escalation and crosses lines that even many street figures consider off-limits. The lack of concrete information about this case has led to wild speculation and conspiracy theories. Some social media users claim to know the woman's identity and the specific circumstances of her death. Others posted alleged screenshots of social media posts or text messages that they claimed were evidence of NBA involvement. However, none of this information has been verified by credible sources or law enforcement. What's particularly troubling about the Ops Girl case is how it's been discussed online. Many of the social media posts and forum discussions about her alleged murder treat it as entertainment or as another notch in NBA Youngboy's alleged body count. The fact that a young woman may have lost her life has been overshadowed by speculation about rap beef and street politics. The case also highlights the broader issue of how women are affected by street violence and gang conflicts. While male gang members and rappers often choose to participate in these conflicts, women who are associated with them, whether as girlfriends, family members, or friends, often become targets through no choice of their own. If the rumors about the TMH girl are true, her death would represent the most innocent victim in this entire saga. From a legal perspective, the Ops Girl case is the weakest on this list. There are no official police reports connecting her death to NBA Youngboy, no arrests have been made, and there's no concrete evidence that such a murder even occurred. The entire case is based on rumors, speculation, and interpretations of rap lyrics that could mean anything or nothing. However, the persistence of these rumors and their widespread acceptance in certain online communities speaks to NBA Youngboy's reputation and the pattern of violence that seems to follow him. Whether or not he was actually involved in this particular case, the fact that people immediately assume his involvement when violence occurs in Baton Rouge shows how his alleged actions have affected his public perception. The Ops Girl case also represents the evolution of how street conflicts play out in the social media age. Unlike the previous cases, which were based on documented murders with official investigations, this case exists primarily in the realm of online speculation and social media rumors. It shows how modern street politics and hip-hop beef can create narratives that may or may not be based in reality. What makes all 5 of these cases particularly chilling when viewed together is the pattern they reveal. In each case, NBA Youngboy had a public conflict with the victim or their associates. In each case, the victim ended up dead under suspicious circumstances. In each case, law enforcement investigations failed to result in convictions that could be directly tied back to Youngboy. And in each case, Youngboy released music afterward that fans interpreted as references to or celebrations of the murders. This pattern has created a situation where NBA Youngboy has become one of the most feared figures in hip-hop, not just because of his music or his success, but because of his alleged willingness to have people killed who cross him. Whether these allegations are true or not, they have become part of his legend and have influenced how other artists and industry figures interact with him. The cases also reveal the limitations of the criminal justice system when it comes to prosecuting cases involving organized street violence. In each instance, key witnesses refused to cooperate. Physical evidence was limited, and prosecutors struggled to prove direct connections between the murders and NBA associates. This has created a situation where everyone knows who was responsible, but no one can prove it in court. From a cultural perspective, these cases represent the dark side of the authenticity that hip-hop culture often celebrates. NBA Youngboy's alleged involvement in these murders has enhanced his street credibility and made his music more compelling to fans who value realness in their artists. But this same authenticity has come at the cost of multiple young lives and has contributed to a cycle of violence that continues to plague communities like Baton Rouge. The 5 cases also show how social media and modern technology have changed the nature of street conflicts. Unlike previous generations of street figures who operated in relative anonymity, NBA Youngboy and his alleged victims conducted their beefs in full public view, with social media posts, diss tracks, and music videos serving as evidence in both the court of public opinion and potentially in actual legal proceedings. What's particularly troubling about these cases is how they've been received by hip-hop fans and media. Rather than being seen as tragedies that represent the worst aspects of street culture, they've often been treated as entertainment or as evidence of NBA Youngboy's authenticity as an artist. This reaction has potentially encouraged other young artists to engage in similar behavior, seeing violence as a path to credibility and success. The legal implications of these cases extend beyond the individual murders. Federal investigators are reportedly looking into whether NBA Youngboy and his associates constitute a criminal enterprise under RICO statutes. If prosecutors can establish a pattern of criminal activity directed by Youngboy, he could face federal charges that would be much more difficult to beat than the state-level cases that have failed to result in conviction so far. The impact of these cases on NBA Youngboy's career has been complex. While the allegations have certainly enhanced his street credibility and made him a more compelling figure to certain fans, they've also limited his opportunities in the mainstream music industry. Major brands are reluctant to associate with him, venues are hesitant to book his shows, and streaming platforms have occasionally restricted his content. Perhaps most importantly, these cases represent 5 young lives that were cut short, 5 families that were destroyed, and 5 communities that were traumatized by violence. Regardless of whether NBA Youngboy was actually involved in these murders, the fact remains that 5 people are dead, and their deaths have contributed to a culture of fear and violence that affects entire communities. The story of these 5 alleged victims also serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of mixing street politics with music careers. Each of these young men, and possibly the young woman, had opportunities to avoid the conflicts that ultimately cost them their lives. But the combination of pride, loyalty, and the pursuit of street credibility led them into confrontations with someone who allegedly had the resources and willingness to have them killed. As we look at these 5 cases together, what emerges is a picture of systematic violence that goes far beyond typical rap beef or street conflicts. If the allegations are true, NBA Youngboy has allegedly orchestrated a campaign of murder that has eliminated his enemies one by one, while using his music career as both a shield and a weapon in these conflicts. The fact that he's been able to allegedly do this while maintaining a successful music career and avoiding serious legal consequences speaks to both his intelligence and the failures of the systems that are supposed to prevent and prosecute such violence. Whether through luck, legal skill, or witness intimidation, he's managed to stay one step ahead of law enforcement while allegedly building a body count that would make him one of the most dangerous figures in hip-hop history. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of these cases is how they've been normalized within hip-hop culture. The fact that an artist can be widely suspected of involvement in multiple murders and still maintain a successful career says something troubling about our society's relationship with violence and authenticity in music. As NBA Youngboy continues his career and these cases remain officially unsolved, the questions they raise about violence, accountability, and the price of authenticity in hip-hop remain unanswered. What is clear is that 5 young people are dead, their families are grieving, and their communities are still dealing with the trauma of their losses. Whether NBA Youngboy was involved in their deaths or not, their stories serve as a reminder of the real human cost of the violence that too often surrounds hip-hop culture. The legacy of these 5 cases will likely follow NBA Youngboy for the rest of his career, regardless of whether he's ever formally charged or convicted in connection with any of them. They've become part of his mythology, contributing to both his fearsome reputation and his artistic credibility, but they've also made him a target for law enforcement and a cautionary tale about the dangers of letting street politics overshadow artistic talent. In the end, the story of these 5 alleged victims is really a story about choices. The choice to engage in conflicts that could turn deadly, the choice to prioritize street credibility over personal safety, and the choice to use violence as a solution to personal and professional problems. Whether NBA Youngboy made those choices or not, the consequences have been devastating for everyone involved, and they continue to reverberate through the hip-hop community and beyond.